Namaste. So, those of us who have been following Sri Aurobindo and the mother's life, one thing which some people may have noticed, some may not have, but it is very striking, is that the mother and Sri Aurobindo, though they were so active, dynamic inwardly, working upon countless sections of humanity, groups, individuals, at the national level, at the worldly level, at the cosmic level, both of them, yet outwardly they were not bound to any particular routine. It is very interesting, as we were reading that sometimes the first meal of Sri Aurobindo would come around 11 o'clock, then 1 o'clock, then 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. Last meal would sometimes be at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, even 1 o'clock once, two meals basically. And same we see with their other activities, like whether it be bathing or something. It's like but the mind cannot understand it, because mind likes to create sections. It cannot work otherwise. Its operating system is time. For the mind, time management is important, and without it, it will get lost into a sea of infinity. So when the mind organizes things, it likes to make a routine. It makes certain rules, it makes certain principles, and lives according to that. So it's very good to discipline and organize life. At the same time, when intuition comes as a leader and begins to organize life, it may upset this entire mental way of looking and operating. And it may bring in something which we cannot even imagine. It's just like when we look at the animal world, it is driven by instincts. Animal will eat when it is hungry. It will not eat because it is, let's say, evening 8 o'clock. It will not eat just because it's lunchtime. But when it is hungry, it eats. Now, this is the animal way of life. The human way of life is, it has fixed timings. So, according to the fixed timings, it will eat its food. Just taking an example. But in what will be the higher spiritual, intuitive, and the supramental way? It will be very different. It will be neither the animal way nor the human way, but a way which is certainly not according to the rules as the mind's operating system works, but something else, something greater, something which is like a luminous guidance spontaneously arising from within and leading us. Now, it is understandable, as Sri Aurobindo's letters are also there, that in a collective life we can't do like that. We can't just say that, okay, whenever I have my deeper sense, I'm sitting in meditation. When when I come out, then I'll go to the dining room and eat. This is a very interesting, however, correspondence of Sri Aurobindo. Rather small little exchange. A sadhak asked Sri Aurobindo that X does not come to dining room, and we have to wait for him. He comes little late. What should we do? So Sri Aurobindo said, you keep his food. Let him come little late and eat it. So all right, they started keeping. Then the next complaint was that he doesn't even come late. Sometimes he doesn't come at all. So what should we do? So Sri Aurobindo said, now you see how Sri Aurobindo's ways. He says, take it in a tiffin and keep it hang it outside his door. So that was done. Then he said, sometimes he eats, sometimes he doesn't eat. What should we do? Sri Aurobindo said, not to worry, you just do this. This is the thing to be done. Now, this can be done once in a while for few people, but naturally in a collective life, there is a need of discipline, because otherwise, by discipline is meant a certain kind of process, certain kind of rules, because that's how the mind operates. But the supramental doesn't operate according to that. There is a very interesting story of darshan when technically the darshan is over. 2 o'clock it had got over. Now everybody was waiting, all the disciples and everybody, because their names had to be sent, and names were sent, and everybody has come. But the mother and Sri Aurobindo kept sitting. Now nobody knows that why they are sitting, but obviously they can't say anything. So they also enjoyed the presence, and almost after 2 hours, suddenly a Navy commander comes, and along with him, two more, US Navy, the ship had come. Later on, he became a disciple, Admiral Rutledge. And he came, and suddenly he walks up to the room, has Sri Aurobindo's darshan, kneels down. In a typical Navy way, he does the salute, and then he goes away. Now, Mother and Sri Aurobindo were just waiting for them. They were a group of 3 people, particularly this Navy commander, and they were just waiting. They knew he has to come. There is another very interesting story about a girl who was to meet the mother at a particular time. First time she has come, and she's a child. And so, she is going on the beach and she's a little busy with certain things. And parents are saying, come, come, we have to go, we have a time, we have to meet the mother. But she gets late, after all, a young child. Then they reach the ashram and they are told by Nalnida that it's already time, you come tomorrow because, mother has come, given darshan and gone away. Now they start feeling very bad inside that, look, it has happened and, it was our fault. Things like that, the thoughts that would come naturally. And as they are beginning to go away, suddenly Champak Lalji, who has also denied them, suddenly he comes. He says, mother is calling. Who is so and so? So the person says, the girl says, it's my name. Mother is calling all of you. So she was waiting for them. This Shobhadi's story, incidentally, documented in a wonderful book, Living in the Presence, I think. So now this is another way of operating where rules of life are there to help us navigate through life. But sometimes we bind ourselves through rules. Whether they are outer rules, rules of everyday life, which is good, of course, or they are mental rules, moral rules, all these rules are needed for the mind, but at the same time, we have to discover the law of truth which expresses itself spontaneously in a different way at each moment. There are such interesting stories about the mother. We were talking about the mother's, the physical education department. So first time when she saw football came, because football used to be played in the ashram and some people got hurt. So the mother said, it's a very brute game. I mean, the people are fighting and they are, literally for a ball, and they can be pretty rough. It's a very brute and rough game. But later on, when the Mohan Bagan team came, and the Mohan Bagan team played, and she saw how artistic they were. And all of these, they were given they received special blessings from the mother. She said, oh, it's a very artistic game. So it's not a fixed view of anything. Same when we see with mother's writings, notings, the mother was not fixed about anything. Now this we are going to read about much earlier phase of her spiritual life, because when she has come to Pondicherry, met Sri Aurobindo, then we have discovered that all her constructions had fallen. And then she has to rediscover life. She is like a newborn child. So what happens, what she is rediscovering is something very interesting. And that's what we are going to read. It's a prayer dated April 23rd, 1914. And she says, all rules have vanished. The regularity of the discipline has disappeared. Fixed timing for everything. You see, even when Swami Vivekananda says that, every day give bath to your body and to your soul, but if you cannot to your body, at least give to your soul. But here it's like as if now the yoga is going to take shape all the time in every which way. All effort has ceased. So disciplining oneself requires effort, which she has done. It's the first step. Freedom comes after that, but this is a state of freedom in which she has fully awakened. Not by my own will, not, I think, by negligence either, but because the circumstances conspire to make it so. So she is leading a different kind of life, and where it's not like, okay, this is my meditation time and I am going to meditate, nobody will disturb me, this is my time to read, this is my time to eat. She is leading a very different kind of life now, where the law of truth is beginning to emerge and all these circumstances are conspiring and rearranging themselves according to that. Then she reveals a profound truth behind it. It seems to me that this inner will, always alert, which is like a steersman at the helm, has evaporated or fallen asleep. And my being is only something peacefully surrendered, which lets itself be carried by the current. So normally we steer our life based on the will. But this will, as if there is something much greater, much higher, much deeper, another law which is beginning to emerge, and this will has been put to sleep, not because of any complacency, not because of any negligence, but because that is how now a new phase is emerging in her life. So we have to see where we stand. It's not that she's advising her to drop rules and disciplining, but she's saying there is a stage beyond. We should not bind ourselves to anything. We should bind ourselves only to the divine. That is what is important. Nothing else is important. And for that, if rules have to go away, so be it. You see, Mira had this problem that, when I leave this household, which I should be living there, and, I have to leave. Should I do it or not do it? But the call of Krishna is much stronger. And that's why Mira became what she became. Buddha steps out of the kingdom and he becomes a Buddha. Vibhishna steps out of his family and his brothers and his attachment and he becomes a devotee of the Lord. And Arjuna and so on and so forth. So rules of life are, as she has said elsewhere in another prayer, are a makeshift arrangement. They are needed at some point, but we should not bind ourselves to that. But what we should discover is not the animal spontaneity, but the spontaneity of the gods. Normally, when we use the word flow with the current, we mean as life carries us, like an animal is driven by instincts. She is speaking of a spontaneity which comes as we begin to live more and more in the truth. Up to the present, it seems to me that the course has been in a straight line. And I would keep the hope that it is thou, O Lord, who guidest the current. So she is saying that up till now she has been following that hard, disciplined path as it is spoken in the Upanishads. Hard is the path, sharp as a razor's edge, where she is constantly making sure that there is no mistake, no error, and straight away she is going to the Supreme. Now this is not an easy thing. But now another movement has come, as if there are several kinds of movements appearing together, and something greater than her will is taking possession of her whole being. And she says, I hope, look at the sincerity. She is not presuming that it is subtly the divine who is leading me, but she is saying that this new phase which is appearing, she hopes that it is the divine who is carrying her. And then she has a prayer. But subtly, if I have sinned sometimes by too great a rigidity, a lack of suppleness and spontaneity, it might well be that now I sin by a contrary excess. So still she is keeping her vigil high. So when we are too rigid about anything, that is, now she is using the word sin. In the sense, sin in the original Vedic sense it is used here. It's not about morality in the way we understand, but it's because we are not open to the divine guidance, to the divine will. So we deviate from the divine will because we are very rigid. We have so many examples, some very absurd examples. I mean, somebody whom mother sends to the bakery to get bread, and he says no because the time is over. After 5 o'clock, we can't give what we have to give. And the person says, mother has said so. Get a note from her. So now this is a kind of mental rigidity in which sometimes people tie themselves. And this rigidity can actually come in the way of the free action of the divine will within us. So she is using the word sin. And whereas there should be suppleness, this is very important to have the divine guidance. If we have very rigid ideas about life, then we are guided by the mind and not by the divine flow. On the other side, she says that equally, when I am moving now, this new movement, let it not be that I become lax, so that my will should be alert. That am I still going closer and closer to you? So in this guidance, one has to be careful that whether the addition to the divine, the growth in the divine consciousness, that is happening or not. Now that is the barometer. When mind decides things, then it is only a framework. But when the inner being flows with the divine guidance, then the only barometer is, am I going closer and closer in a greater and greater union? Her soul has already united with the divine, but the mind, life, body, heart, they are experiencing a greater addition, closeness, intimacy and identification, or they are moving away. Now this is where she doesn't want to fall into the other excess. And then she says, I have come to accept peacefully the state in which I am, and to say to myself that thou wilt vouchsafe to me the true, the absolute consciousness when thou thinkest fit. So this is the stage of yoga when there is no effort, but one is constantly being carried, because even when we put too much effort, intensity into our seeking, it becomes a veil. So when the divine wants to lead us further, He will lead us in whichever way He wants to lead us. Now, there are no more mental conceptions or mental constructions of any kind. So, it's a state of peace, it's a state of complete trust, and it's a state of total surrender. I regard, then how does one look at this world? I regard all this mobile world as a play which unrolls itself. And I take part in this play with the same energy and conviction as if I believed it to be real and important. So, though it is a dream, but Sri Aurobindo says it's a dream fact, vision of the truth. Therefore, it is real and it is true. Because it is the true, the one whose dream it is. And therefore, when we participate in it, we should have both these consciousnesses simultaneously. We should know about its transientness. At the same time, we should know that through this transientness, it is the permanent who is expressing himself. All this is quite new. But what is sure is that never were my mind and heart so completely at rest. What will come of it, I know not. But I trust to Thee, O Lord. Thou knowest best how to use and develop Thy instrument. So she is in a state. This is perfect surrender, perfect adhesion to the divine, and flowing with the divine consciousness as it is leading, leaving aside all the conceptions and rules that the mind constructs. Once again, it is a very advanced stage of yoga, and if one does it prematurely, then there is obviously a danger. But once one has arrived at a fundamental unity within, then slowly the mental working has to be replaced by a deeper and higher divine guidance, divine leading, rather a divine unfolding in this creation. So now her participation in creation is no more based on the outer rules and regulations, but based she has made for herself. But it is based on the inner unfolding of the divine. So it is completely supple. It can change the next moment. Something which she has done now, next moment it may be something very different based on the divine unfolding. This is a tremendous state, a very wide and supple state. And we shall read this prayer again so that we may also move towards it. April 23rd, 1914. All rules have vanished. The regularity of the discipline has disappeared. All effort has ceased. Not by my own will, not, I think, by negligence either, but because the circumstances conspire to make it so. It seems to me that this inner will, always alert, which is like a steersman at the helm, has evaporated or fallen asleep. And my being is only something peacefully surrendered, which lets itself be carried by the current. Up to the present, it seems to me that the course has been in a straight line, and I would keep the hope that it is Thou, O Lord, who guidest the current. But certainly, if I have sinned sometimes by too great a rigidity, a lack of suppleness and spontaneity, it might well be that now I sin by a contrary excess. I have come to accept peacefully the state in which I am, and to say to myself that Thou wilt vouchsafe to me the true, the absolute consciousness when Thou thinkest fit. I regard all this mobile world as a play which unrolls itself. And I take part in this play with the same energy and conviction as if I believed it to be real and important. This is the state of complete inner liberation, the dual state. All this is quite new. But what is sure is that never were my mind and heart so completely at rest. What will come of it, I know not. But I trust to thee, O Lord, thou knowest best how to use and develop thy instrument. Namaste.